Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Joanna, for inviting me to preach today. It's so good to be with you all, Holy Trinity. Please join me in prayer. Creator God, liberating child, and Holy Spirit, source of hope and struggle, be with us in this time of reflection. Let's start with Matthew's gospel that shifts us away from the intimacy of the birth story of the star child Jesus and gives way to a public witness of the meaning of this birth and the future life of Jesus. It's the story of the embodiment of hope, the hope of another possible world, a world where power structures are turned upside down, where God embraces and participates in the entire human life cycle from birth to death. We become bound together with the divine in the experience of life's beauty and joys, as well as its suffering, from the pain, blood, sweat, excrement, and danger of birthing through life's struggles to the vulnerability of death. And all of this is taken out into the public realm when the Magi come to honor divinity made flesh, this infleshing, this incarnation of God in the form of a vulnerable human baby, born in poverty far from home. This is God's hope in us. This is also God's rebuke against the status quo. And it is our call to build the beloved community now. But the story does not stop here. This isn't some kind of superficial feel-good hope, is it? It isn't the story of a hallmark neoliberal kind of hope that ignores human suffering, struggle, pain, or grief. We know that the Magi go home another way. We also know that Herod kills all baby boys under the age of 2, and Joseph and Mary flee to Egypt. Where is the hope in that part of the story? Did the parents of the murdered children feel hope? Did Mary and Joseph feel hope when they had to flee? I confess that I sometimes struggle with hope, so I thought I'd share 3 of my own stories of finding hope in unlikely places. I invite you to reflect with me about where we might find hope in the face of personal suffering, as well as in the face of an unrelenting global pandemic, a climate crisis, and the ongoing evils of neoliberal global capitalism, which continue to adversely affect most of the world's populations. First story, hope through faith. As many of you know, my son David was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia on October 27th, 2010, shortly before his 5th birthday. The ensuing treatment plunged me and my family into a world of suffering I had not previously known. Our family and our new childhood cancer friends faced childhood mortality on a regular basis. His diagnosis and treatment had an economic, physical, emotional, and spiritual impact on my family. I was anxious, afraid, and sometimes without hope. 3 years later, towards the end of his treatment in 2014, he was admitted to the hospital for emergency hip surgery for a childhood virus gone haywire in his immunely compromised 8-year-old body. I heard him cry out, literally for hours, with the words, "Why? I hate you. I hate my life." He once said, "I'd rather be dead," and frequently asked, "What did I do?" He actually asked, "What weapons will they use for the operation?" And he described the feeling in his incision as a hurting heartbeat. After 3 years of moving through David's illness, I had learned that it was important to simply keep going. I did not know that tomorrow would be better, but I knew it would come and at least it would be different. I appreciated most the friends who just showed up. They did not say it was going to be okay. They were simply with me. I remember Ian Soughton bringing over blue cheese and port to sustain us. I did not always feel hope, but I waited, knowing that perhaps the next day would bring the possibility of hope. Looking back, I think I would name that waiting as some kind of faith. Faith in God? I'm not sure. But it was in the faith of waiting, the expectation that tomorrow would at least be different, if not better, where I found hope. Where was hope? Hope was in having faith. Hope was in waiting. Hope was in persisting. I wrote a poem at the time, which I'd like to share with you, called Seeking Your Hand. Seeking your hand as we walk along the street, so small, so vulnerable, so soft. But I need your strength. Who would have thought that at the tender age of 5 with cancer, you would be such a tower of strength, able to comfort your dad after a superhuman struggle against taking medicine that nearly undid you both, able to keep me going with your own little fragile hand tucked in mine, pulsing out hope and strength and love, every fiber of your body fixed on life. All of this makes me think of different words for hope, like esperar in Spanish and espérance in French, which both mean to wait for as well as to hope. And the Greek word for hope is elpis, which similarly has the sense of waiting in it. Interestingly, elpis is also a minor god, a Greek goddess. And in her, hope is inextricably linked to human suffering and the plight of humanity. Too often, conversations about hope glide over the suffering part. We're uncomfortable with it. Suffering and struggle, pain, loneliness, grief, these things are all inconvenient for sanitized liberal notions of hope that tell us that everything is going to be okay. And if it's not, then that's your problem. You haven't gotten over it. You need to move on, focus on something positive. But what if you can't? What if life has dealt you a raw deal? Maybe you get cancer, lose a job, work at a place that treats you badly. Maybe you had to flee your country. Maybe you had to give birth in someone's shack with no health care. Maybe in your country, the ruler killed all the boys who were younger than 2. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe you struggle with addictions or mental illness, or you are the victim of violence. My point is, people don't like to talk about any of this. Where is hope in this picture? What hope happens when hope is not discernible? Story 2, hope through love. 2 years ago, when our beloved Lisa died by suicide, I don't think she felt hope. In the wake of her death, her husband, my brother, and her boys, as well as the rest of us who loved her, have struggled to find hope. Where was hope? I'm still not sure. But I can say with a fierce certainty that I know there was and there is love. Love was not enough to save Lisa, to give her hope. But the heartbroken love left by her absence has helped us knit ourselves back together. And in that love, born out of a terrible, unspeakable suffering, comes some kind of anticipation of a future. It is present also in commitments to destigmatize mental illness by talking about it, sharing experiences, and through a loving presence of accompaniment that doesn't rush too quickly to say everything will be okay. This hope is hidden. an imperceptible glimmer, an unspeakable whisper, both profoundly human and profoundly sacred. It is in relationship, in other people, in their witness, in their prayers, in their food, in their accompaniment, in their tender touch. It is also present in the defiant hope of the divine, choosing love by joining humanity as a marginalized, vulnerable human baby. Where is hope? Hope is in love. Story 3, hope through action. This is the story of these present times. It is the story of action in the face of seeming hopelessness. This story includes my children, Emma and David, who tell me in no uncertain terms that they see no good future for humanity. The climate crisis is their reality, and the future is bleak. And yet, they go out to demonstrate for climate justice. They act in the face of hopelessness. This story includes healthcare and frontline workers and volunteers who, exhausted, return day after day to care for the rest of us. This story includes the uncovering of unmarked graves at residential schools and our own slaughter of the innocents. It also includes the ongoing terrible impacts of colonialism on Indigenous peoples, as well as those who are racialized and marginalized in other ways. And yet, Indigenous peoples continue to work towards reconciliation in the face of seeming hopelessness. I am personally grateful for new artistic collaborations in Saskatoon. Over bannock and tea, we are forging relationships rooted in faith, in love, and in action. We take our drums and our voices from the stage to the street to protest in solidarity with the people of Wet'suwet'en, as well as Indigenous communities in Saskatoon, communities vulnerable to poverty, discrimination, police violence. Julia Esquivel, the poet of our first reading, writing in her context of struggles for justice in Guatemala in the 1980s, reframes the beginning of the Gospel of John for us. In her telling, the word becomes action. The word, la palabra, el verbo, is the doing. It is hope embodied. The word, she says, awoke us from the lethargy which had robbed us of our hope. Hope is in action. The actions of people struggling for justice. The action of Magi returning home another way. The action of Mary and Joseph fleeing to Egypt. Actions of resilience, actions of rebellion, actions of persistence, actions for life. Actions that tell the story of hope against all odds. These stories inspire me. These commitments to a future where no future seems possible give me hope. Here, hope is found in faith, not a facile, unquestioning faith, but the persistent faith of keeping on, of moving into tomorrow, open to what it might bring. Here, hope is found in love, in our deep commitments to relationship. It is born out of suffering and knits us back together when we think we can't go on. And here, hope is found in action. Our world is in trouble. Though I am a doubter, I still mostly believe that the church has something good to offer. We are called to love, and through love to act, even amidst fear, doubt, and radical suffering. These stories also embody God's incarnational rebuke against human structures of oppression, and they embody the liberating love at the heart of the gospel. The love that the Magi were seeking when they visited the star child Jesus and returned home another way. The love that persisted and was present in Jesus' friends at the foot of the cross. And these stories include Bishop Tutu, whose life life's witness has been testified to over the last week. As a way of moving into the next part of the service, let's listen to a musical setting by Alan Gosser of words Bishop Tutu spoke in 1990 when he visited the Osnaburg First Nation in Northern Ontario, now called the Mishki-Gogamong Nation. When your nation lives a lie, says Tutu, God cannot allow that lie to prevail. Because your cause is just, it will prevail. One day, he says, you will be free in the way you want to be free. As we begin 2022, I wish you hope. Hope through faith, hope through love, hope through action.